initially I wanted to get a drum set and be a drummer, and I think in a lot of ways I'm still kind of a frustrated drummer. But yeah, drum set was just too, the bridge too far, man. It was too much money, and I don't think my parents would have ever tolerated me banging on drums after school. So I went to the guitar just because it was economically that was what worked, and just started plinking around, listening to my Kiss records, AC/DC, stuff like that, and trial and error, figuring out the guitar. I don't think I played in a formal band until maybe '85, like my junior year of high school, with actually Chad Channing, and we had this band called Stone Crow that was kind of I guess in a lot of ways we're kind of a malfunction wannabe band.
Ah, okay.
But not near as good. But it was fun. That was like the first band like actually loaded up the van and went to Seattle and supported like national punk bands on tour and stuff. So that was kind of my first exposure to playing live. I've known Chad since 6th grade. He was in my homeroom in 6th grade. Chad was exotic and cool because in 6th grade he had long hair and a mustache.
Nice.
So it's like, oh yeah, that guy's cool. I want to be his friend.
So it sounds like your friendship with Chad Channing was the reason that you were able to get into Nirvana?
Yeah, that was definitely it. Well, I remember seeing Nirvana, and they were called Skid Row. I think they went through a couple different name permutations, but I think the first time I saw them was at the Community World Theater in Tacoma, like in 1988 maybe. And the reason I got interested is because a friend of mine was like, oh, you need to check out Dale Crover's new band, because at the time Dale was playing drums with Kurt and Chris, and so that was kind of, oh, it's Dale's new band. But I went and saw him several times with Dale, and it was like, you could tell there's something going on there. I don't know at what point Chad ended up in the band or what the mechanism was for that, but through being friends with Chad, that's how I met Kurt and Chris.
So Chad Channing joins Nirvana and is their drummer. The Nirvana hooks up with Jack Endino to record their first album. The internet legend has it that you were the one that paid for the first album. Is that true?
No, yeah, I did. At that point, I'd been working as a commercial fisherman in Alaska for several seasons and had some money in the bank and was asked to finance the record, and I said, sure.
Were you actually in the band at that point, or were you just looking to help them finance the album?
I'm not even sure the chronology at this point. I remember at one point hanging out with them, Kurt broached the idea of adding a second guitar player. I think mainly just to augment them live, not so much in the studio. And I was like, yeah, he gave me a demo tape with Dale playing drums on it. I went home, learned the songs. And Nirvana was interesting because, well, at least at that time, they didn't really rehearse. And I think that was just a function of Kurt and Chris lived in one town, Chad lived in another, and I lived in another, and it was just kind of logistically complicated. The first time I played with them live was a dorm party at the Evergreen State College in Olympia, this dorm called K-Dorm, which was known for its parties, I guess. Yeah, I went in there just kind of cold, played the songs. I talked to someone who was there maybe about a year afterwards, and he was like, it's kind of shaky, but when it came together, it came together. So. Okay,
yeah, interesting. So, what was the music scene like around that time when you were playing with Nirvana?
At the time, I don't even think I was that aware of it. But I was aware that there were cool bands there, but I think. I was a teenager and my life experience was pretty limited at that point, and I think I probably just assumed, every town had cool bands and, had shows, and it was this group of people that, went to each other's shows, and, it was definitely a fun thing to do as a, teenager going into my early 20s.
Can you describe your time with Nirvana, the types of gigs that you would play with them, and then how you left the band?
Did like a West Coast tour and then the first U.S. tour. I mean, the first U.S. tour was, it's the classic indie rock van tour. Load up all the gear, get in the van, play two, spotty shows in the smaller towns and maybe bigger turnouts in the bigger towns. But, I mean, there's definitely, and every band who's done this has the same stories. Like playing a show at the Mason Jar in Phoenix, and then afterwards, you have enough money to buy gas in the next town or buy something to eat. What do you do? Interesting. It was, it's cool to see the country by driving all over it. Like in high school, I'd read On the Road and definitely had romantic notions about driving across America.
Who were you guys on tour with?
It was just us. We did some shows supporting, maybe a couple shows supporting Tad on the East Coast.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I remember reading something about a Tad Nirvana tour.
Yeah, but I mean, that tour, that U.S. tour was definitely, that was it for me as far as playing with Nirvana. I came to the point where I realized I wasn't going to basically be allowed to participate in songwriting or be anything more than a side guy, which is fine, It wasn't my band. I honestly just felt kind of relieved. It was getting stressful towards the end.
Music Life Radio.
Stories at the intersection